Good afternoon and welcome from the Laos People Army Historical Museum. It is Tuesday the 18th of February 2025 and I've just purchased a ticket to check out the museum, and it is a massive 20,000 kit which works out at 30 Thai baht, so we'll see if we can get as money's worth by looking around. As soon as you walk in, there's a few pieces. So there's a MiG Soviet produced MiG-21. It's still got the jet in place as well. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, I'm not 100% sure what air force they have left now. I would presume it's very small, if any at all, and probably limited to helicopters and maybe a few small surveillance aircraft. But since being here, I can't believe like how cheap all the museums have been. There's been nothing that's been more than sort of the equivalent of 50 baht. They've all been super cheap. So M18, again, produced in USSR. And I have no idea what this is. Let's see if we've got it on the plaque. So this is a AN2, or again USSR made. But they're all undercover, so they're all in pretty good condition. And I very much doubt, to be honest, that they're seeing much active service with the cost of servicing, replacement parts, and potentially pilots to fly them. I don't think they'd have done seeing much active service. So we've got a mix of modern weapons, even down to a guy there with a crossbow, a spear. This guy in the classic Cold War anti-aircraft position. So one man stood with the tripod of a 7.62 machine gun and the other man firing. I don't think I'd like to be that guy. You don't need to much to go wrong for you to go missing, do you? With all as well, Lao museums, they're open from 8 and then they close at 11:30 until 1:30 for a nice leisurely lunch, and then they're open from 1:30 till 4. So being here at the afternoon now, it's just gone 2:20. Exactly the same as most museums in Laos. There's pretty much nobody here. And it would appear as well from a few days in Vientiane that it's more of a staging post for somebody. So there's a lot of people come here for visa reasons, and there's a lot of people that just come for a couple of days and then head off to Luang Prabang or Vientiane. So we've got a T-34 there. Amazing to see how small it is. Obviously the predecessor to the Soviet workhorse, which was the 55. A 122mm howitzer. Another 122 howitzer. A T-58, Chinese produced. When you look at these compared to modern pieces of armour now, you know, it's not going to take much, even from you know a 50 cal, an old 50 cal like a Dushka, which would have been used when this were in use. You could easily, you know, knock a tank track off with something like that. But they're super small, especially if they're a 3-man crew. We'll just check out this other bronze that's here before we head off in. So we've got a good old propaganda film crew at the back. Signals crew. Nice NBC suited man. I presume it'd be pretty brutal wearing that in a tropical environment. Over here, got your officer, RPG man. I mean, this shows that there's airborne forces. I don't know if there still is airborne forces, but there's a guy here with his parachute and reserve. Be interesting if they still have those. Keeping women in the fold as well. We've got a woman here with a rifle, and a doctor, and a child bearing flowers. We'll head inside now then and see what it's about. I think there's a few more real life artillery, armour and aviation pieces at the back. But we'll have a look inside and see what's going on. I know for a couple of the museums it says that you're not allowed to film inside, but Vientiane being Vientiane, I've not really seen any police whatsoever, and I'm not sure if they'd enforce it anyway, so we'll see what we can get. So this printing press here apparently was used to print orders and documentation from 1960 to 1996, so they were still using this just under 30 years ago. And there's some pretty cool photos as well. I'd love to be able to get originals of these. Look at that's pretty cool. Got a fighter on an elephant. A few more pieces with inside. Got a small signals truck here. suppose it's the Soviet version of the British Land Rover or the USA Jeep. Let's see what's in the back. Yeah, about a similar type of size as well. Looks like it's got cross-axle diffs so that you can lock them out. Just see if there's a diff lock on. Yeah, so it's got a 2 4-wheel drive and then cross-axle differential lock on there. Small APC with a 762 belt fed machine gun on top, and then this is the T76 light tank, and these are real pieces. These are a proper from in service, but if you just give them a tap compared to obviously modern armaments now, I really don't think that this bit of kit would even stand much from something, like a 50 caliber Dushka, which should have been in service when this was in service. But it would certainly beat driving about in a soft skin vehicle, that is for sure. So this is I believe the BMN1, sort of early 80s APC with main armament, and you can see that things have progressed a little bit. We've got UV lights for night vision. There's some sort of form of running gear protection, but again, it's not very rugged. It wouldn't take much to destroy that. Curved front, but it has got a flat bottom hull, so any landmines are going to pretty much finish that off. This is from this armoured vehicle is from the 70s, and it sort of reminds me quite a lot of the British Saxon. Very similar, apart from the main armament on top. What is pretty cool is the 2 lifted running wheels here. So these don't actually touch the floor, but if you're crossing rugged terrain, it'll stop you from getting bottomed out. And there is a drive chain, if you can see there. So I would have thought that that's not in operation all the time, only when needed. And then you've got a bigger wheeled APCR here, which is the Armoured Vehicle 60. Produced, I think, in a sort of 1975. So 8 wheels, all in drive. Operated same as a tank, so a skid steer system. One side drives, the other one locks up. And again, a flat bottomed hull, which seems to be quite porous as well. It looks like some of the exhaust fumes come out of the back of that, so I would have thought any type of landmine, and that would totally finish the vehicle and the crew, unfortunately, in there. For all you Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, this is the Lao version of the wrecker. So the recovery vehicle with a workshop in the back. Apparently it came into service in the early 70s. and it would resemble sort of the same size as the British Army 14-ton Bedford. I'm sorry I have to refer to British Army vehicles, it's just that they're the ones that I know and the ones that I can sort of compare them to. And same again with this next one. So this is a CAS 66, and this was made and in production in between the late 60s and mid 70s. It's 4-wheel drive. I can't actually get inside to have a look, but I will presume it goes from 2 to 4-wheel drive. In fact, saying that, one moment, the door's open. Let's have a nosy inside if we can. Yeah, so there. So we've got the movement from 2 to 4-wheel drive, and I would have thought one of them will be a PTO for the winch, the power takeoff, and I would have thought that it's a cross-axle diff as well. So this would definitely resemble size-wise and capability of the 4-ton Bedford that was used in the United Kingdom. And funnily enough, even though it's not that many years, sort of early 2000s, I joined the British Army. My first vehicle to look after was a 4-ton Bedford, which would probably be about the same age as this truck. So it looks like it's all interchangeable. So troop carrying seats. I would have thought here a canopy can be fitted, and canvases. This will be, apparently it's a 401 food delivery truck. And the one next to it, so we've got the Russian relics there, and this is a similar truck with the Chinese writing. Looks like we might have had a bit of bullet rash there. And looking at this one, it looks like it's just a standard 2-wheel drive vehicle, and I would think as well that they'll all be there would all be crash boxes, double clutch, so they'll definitely take a bit of getting used to. Now this is quite interesting here. So this is an ambulance, but few people that have been keeping an eye on the unfortunate situation that's happening in the Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. Like, these vehicles are still in service now. You're still seeing these vehicles flying up and down in the echelon groups for the battlefield. Let's see if we can see what sort of gearing system it's got. See if it opens up. Well, it don't open up. I don't know if you can see that. So yeah, so we'll have a 4-speed box, and it is a 4-wheel drive. I don't know if it'll be the diffs will be able to be interlocked, but it is a 4-wheel drive vehicle. And then for all you pan bashers, we've got a Lao field kitchen, and this were in operation from 1975 until 2005. So a few lads that are in, or been in British Army or any army really, like, look at the size of that. That's like a tiny little field kitchen, but I presume the difference in rations that they got, even though we always used to complain about ours, I presume they're a lot more simple. So we have a couple of 37mm Chinese made anti-aircraft guns. And this is a 37mm Chinese anti-aircraft gun with its counterpart here. Been exactly the same, 37mm, but with 2 barrels. This is a Soviet-made 23mm anti-aircraft gun. Believe it or not, in the early days of Afghanistan in the 2000s, these actual pieces here were being used, positioned on mountain passes to attack convoys, and for soft skin and semi-armoured vehicles, you really wouldn't want to be on business end of one of these. And they was used and used very effectively. So they might be old, but they're simple and they're effective. And I would bet in many countries across the world, especially in the Middle East and Africa, I bet there's a lot of these pieces that are still well kept and still being used if need to be used. So looking at these larger artillery pieces here, there's a Soviet-made 85mm mobile mortar. This is a 122mm howitzer, also Soviet-made, and this is a 105mm howitzer. And if you look at the simplicity of them, there's pretty much nothing that can go wrong. And again, these artillery pieces are still used in sort of developing nations and civil wars that are happening right now. The interesting thing about the 105 there, so for all you guys that served in Afghanistan in the 2000s, the 105 shell was one of the preferred shells to modify to turn into an IED. It was a very simple shell to change, and sometimes just as simple as drilling a hole into the back to the fuse, putting a normal burning cordite fuse in, and then attaching that to a mosquito coil. The mosquito coil would be lit. When the mosquito coil burnt down to where the cordite fuse was, that'd ignite, the fuse would go into the detonator, and then that would fire off. So these bits of kit are still used, unfortunately, and are still taking lives, but these are big bits of kit, again, that you certainly wouldn't want to be on the business end of any of these. So they also have a Huey Bell here that was captured, and interestingly, it's still got the, don't know if you can see that, it's still got the 7.62 minigun, door-mounted minigun inside. And there's also a selection of other American items which was taken around the time of the Vietnam War. Looking at the M113, like compared to the other APC that I knocked earlier, you can really tell the difference just from tapping that. You can see that is some sort of armour giving you some sort of protection, but still a flat bottom hull. And also on this one there's no drive protection, I would presume drive protection was fitted due to the machined holes there. Now these bits here, there's no explanation with these, but I find these really interesting because these are something that is still killing people to these days. And obviously there's huge amounts of UXO, unexploded ordnance, within Laos, but due to the poverty in the country, locals in certain areas near the border are actually going and actively digging to try to find pieces of UXO so that they can weigh them in for scrap. And you know, it might be hard to believe, but that's what people are actually doing. People are actively digging for bombs to weigh in. I think we've also got a bit of there's an old 5.0 there as well, belt-fed 5.0. But yeah, it's a sad state of affairs when you're that poor that you have to try to dig up bombs so you can weigh them in for scrap. And these two huge tubes here were missile transportation containers made by the Soviet Union to transport missiles from Vietnam to Laos to help fight against the United States. So there's a section here of UXO and munitions, and for anybody that didn't know, this is a cluster bomb munition which is now illegal under Geneva Convention, but unfortunately, even though it's illegal under Geneva Convention, they're still being used in Ukraine now. They were used in Syria. So it's an airburst munition that initiates above the ground, and every single one of these balls inside is a separate bomb itself. Failure rate on these bombs is about 20%, so 20% is a huge amount, and you know, when people pick them up, that's game over. They get into rivers, they get moved about, and there's no way to track cluster munitions where they are. You know, they just spread forever. But this is a display of all the different types of munitions that was dropped on Laos, or some of the different munitions that were dropped on Laos. Out of the 280 million bombs that were dropped on this country, in the 70s. So it's a pretty grim view really when you look at it like that. Again, for any of you guys that served in Afghanistan, you probably recognise this from your weapon familiarisation trainings. That's a PKM. And even after all these years, and I said previously, like a lot of the armaments and weapons in here, they're still been used. They're still been used after being in production 50, 60 years ago. And especially this one here, so the recoilless rifle, that it's known as, is a recoilless armament that fires a rocket, and this was used extensively when I were in Afghanistan, and unfortunately I've seen this what it's capable of at close hand. So something years and years old like this is still 100% lethal. and still 100% in service in developing nations. So it is, it's weird to see these weapons again after I've not seen them for sort of 10 years. For anybody that's interested in improvised weaponry, so this is about as basic as it gets. So that is a wooden tube bound with leather, a basic firing system on the side, and it would be for a small rocket propelled armament, but that's about as basic as it gets. I don't think I'd be wanting to use it myself, like, but there we have it. So if you've made it to the end of the video, thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in military history or weaponry or armaments or anything like that, it's a cracking place to come, and especially for the price. Every single museum I've visited in Laos has been unbelievably cheap, and as you can see from here, it's quite well maintained as well. It looks really well. So any questions, just leave them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, and thank you very much for watching.